I've worked 20 years now in the business of digital experience, and actually working with typically CMOs, CIOs, and there's lots of reasons why these guys are not being successful. The comment you made a minute ago around how to be successful, how are we going to measure this, how do we actually deliver this experience? I've come to learn of some key reasons why people fail at that, and that's what I want to walk you through with today. And then I want to talk about what we can do about it. And actually, this is where you start to converge content, data, and the experience itself. So really, when we strip a digital experience down to its basics, we're really talking about this exchange, which is really a content and data. In simple terms, it's show me something that interests me, but I need some data to work out what that is. And increasingly, it's around trust management as well around there. So the more responsible brands that I'm working with are really investing heavily in this, and I know we had some great commentary on this earlier on today. So I like to look at it in this value exchange way, and getting this balancing act right is really kind of the goal of most of the people I'm working with. So if we go back a couple of steps in terms of what it takes to build that 3 stages of engagement, this is where you have, through digital experiences, anonymous, be able to, where you don't know nothing completely, you've got no information on somebody, through to a second phase, which is really about known, where we can start to imply some preferences and some interests. For example, I have an experience where it's a cats and dogs website, for example, a really stupid example, but if you're looking at more dogs than cats, then I'll show you more dogs, and we can start making decisions about that. And then working towards the end here, which is understood, where we literally have multiple data points, and we're able to make very specific decisions about what you're interested in and what your next best step is, but often based on lookalikes as well and predictive models. And ultimately, being able to work across this section between these 3 phases, where great customer experience lives. But what I wanted to go here is actually, I talked about this experience, and of 20 years in solutioning with some of the biggest companies in the world, which I'm not sure we're able to talk about some of those things here, but this is what I've come up with so far. But this is some quite basic reasons why people fail. I think one of the commentators earlier on talked about people, process, and technology, and absolutely I agree with that. So, for example, if we look at a standard personalised experience that we're trying to create, we have this common steps, very abstracted, high level, and I'm obviously doing this from a website point of view to keep it simple, but this is the typical process someone will go through. We would have problems that we'd have. Outside of our UX and design phase, we're going to get into inconsistent classification of assets. When I'm working with businesses that have hundreds of brands, literally, and they're deploying this, and able to be able to deliver consistent assets as well as a basis for their digital experiences. To be able to, that's the first problem. The second problem is we start saying, well, we want to build a personalised experience, so therefore, what data do I need? And that usually gets into a massive process that can take years of trying to bring every tiny piece of data that we've got into this experience, really overcomplicating things. And often, your time to value and be able to deliver a productive customer experience is already starting to tail off, because often this is where the first major issue happens when we're trying to bring the right kind of data in to support our experiences. I think as well understanding our customers as well. All this work that goes into UX and really profiling. I often work very closely with UX side of the business, and then be able to translate that into actual actionable customer segmentation is actually somewhat of an art in its own right. So that means that you can actually trigger certain outcomes based on data. And often that transition between persona, UX, and segmentation is not really understood, and it starts to lead to other problems around how do you measure success against a certain cohort of audiences? Well, you can start to see these things piling up. It's very typical. This leading to, obviously, as well, you go into some kind of optimization cycle where you're defining segments and trying to evaluate them. And what you're really doing is building a house of cards where not one of these areas is properly understood. So we end up building this expensive cyclic optimization loop, which rarely works. And that's why something like 86% of personalized experiences tend to fail, because we're really not able to get the basics right here. And I think the other key one as well, it's particularly when it comes to technology and being able to lack of training, lack of investing in what that success looks like as well. Often people, they'll spend a ton of cash on a bunch of technology, haven't got a Scooby what to do with any of it, and when you're going to get any success out of this as well. So lack of training, the wrong kind of team structures around this. These are all like some of the very common problems, and ultimately it adds up to unpredictable timelines. And this is really, it comes together. We heard today about accessibility today, deploying your accessibility capabilities, be able to bring your actual your UX experience to life, having the agility as a business to be able to make all these changes. It comes down to the platform, ultimately, to be able to do that and how flexible that platform is. So what can we do about some of this stuff? I'm mindful of time on here as well. So removing some of those barriers. So let's go back to the start of this here and start looking at one of the other challenges that businesses have now as well is we've heard AI a few times. I don't want to go on about AI too much, but we're going to have to change the way that we think and interact with AI. The types of teams we build around this is going to change. Already is changing. Most of the people I consult with, it's like, what do? We don't know. We've got all this architecture, we've got all this expertise from UX, we got these compliance standards. We're lost. We've never been more lost than we are now. And so it's coming back and sort of working out what do we actually need? What are the table stakes here? So, for example, bringing AI in, like automatic classification of assets. If you think about an asset, all experiences are built on some kind of asset. If that's not categorized correctly and easy to find, findability is a big thing, how are you going to do that? You're not going to be able to do it. So you can have as many lofty goals as you want, you're not going to get there or be able to deploy this into the real world. Secondly, looking at what actual data do we need to build a personalized experience, to get that basics, table stakes for it. Actually, if you categorize your assets correctly, using computer vision, tagging, consistent learning models that can work this out, and then you look at other sort of reliable types of content, like from a CMS perspective, where you have, that's about the best curated content you have, the ability to be able to have a trusted source of data that you can base that context on. You've already got one in your CMS, like for example, the content you're pushing out is probably being reviewed more than any other piece of content that you're interacting with. So straight away, we've got some basic level here where we're able to derive quite a lot of context without having to do anything with any additional data. So be able to extract metadata sometimes to be able to derive the context of our audience. And the implications for that is removing, for that start point, a lot of the integration requirements you have for data. There's some things you can bring in. Of course, you might bring in CRM data, transactional data, depending on your context, if you're working a commerce experience, whatever that may be. But the thing I see most commonly is spending 2 years to get a couple of bits of data together, and the classic problem of bad data in, bad insight out. Be able to get to the basics here, where you are able to trust the relationship between the user interactions with your assets, that's what an experience is, and the curated, reliable content that exists in your content system is actually a pretty good start point to be able to automate a lot of this process. So by doing these things right, what you're able to do ultimately is remove that process, that manual optimization cycle. And so release some of the complexity, automated customer segmentation. Someone mentioned predictive models earlier on. The platforms that these days are getting so powerful where you're able to leverage very sophisticated machine learning models that will work out customer segmentation. But the problem is it's not the models, it's getting the right information into those models. And that's why I come back to this point I'm making here. Get your damn assets right. You're building a house, get the foundations right, get your CMS structure right, consistency. This other stuff starts to happen. Then we can use AI in a sensible way, and ML. I do differentiate between those two, having, say from an AI is usually a generative assistant type thing, and ML is typically more automation. They're all types of machine learning and AI, but be able to do those with very basic tools, you're able to start making a huge difference here. And typically the people I'm talking to anyway kind of often want to make some money, so it might be a bit dirty word here today, but it's about customer lifetime value, growing that, and actually being able to get to a great table stakes position without as much effort. And it's just about working differently, being on a different kind of team around your content and data and the interactions for that. A lot of this exists there. And I think when you step back a bit, which is what I'm trying to do here, half the problems go away. I spent a lot of time working with Gartner and Forrester on these subjects and problems that businesses are having out there. I showed them this, and they said that's the best articulation that we've seen of this type of problem, and that's what's happening out there. And this is stopping people getting to these goals. And so I'm just passionate about helping people to be able to go back to basics, understand the basic requirements they need, the type of team they can build around this, and actually remove some of those problems. So ultimately, we're looking at here, if we're looking at, say, benefits of AI and ML for team productivity, you can see 6 categories here. Obviously, computer vision, tagging assets, being able to streamline that creation process. Like, part of that process now is automatic naming. All this stuff exists now. Being able to generative content creation as well. This is something that is a standard approach now, which brings into question some of the companies I'm working, particularly in healthcare, around generating content automatically, but then bringing in this concept of human in the loop into it. So it becomes more about the review process and be able to approve content that's largely generated in an automated way. So that's one of the things. But the fact that the system itself is largely creating a lot of the content, that's not going anywhere. So how we manage that and put the governance around it is important. Predictive analytics, like the models have been around for years that work, and that's not the problem. It's like, as I was saying, it's what data you feed to them. And part of what I was talking about in the beginning of this presentation was really, how you go about doing that. And then looking at sort of reduced operational costs, some of these business impacting benefits that come off the back of this, even down to code creation. Like I started life a long time ago as a developer, actually a games developer, believe it or not. You can ask me what game later on if you're interested. I was a published work for that, but I can actually create code now just by through a generative model, language model. So that's how we can use these tools responsibly and be able to access the data we have, coming back to using aspects of transparency and using this data and experience creation in a responsible way is key. And I think ultimately value created, reduced cost of complexity. There is going to be someone in there, often I answer to these people, build ROI models and be able to look at the outcomes based on these solutions that we put together. These type of things, what time to value, where are the benefits, the operational costs, your bottom line benefits, top line growth, ability to target customers and operate against particularly contextual or relevant use cases or based on what a user's interested in, like show me the next best action, next best channel. I think that's it. I had to speed up here a little bit because we were a bit tight on time, but hopefully I've just rushed through that one there. So if you've got any more questions about this or want to talk about it, I'm going to be on one of the booths outside, or you're welcome to email me at that address there. But hopefully that helped catch up for you there. Thank you. Also, I had no notes as well because their stuff doesn't work up there, so I was completely riffing this. So. Thank you.